Or if the bomb that drops on you gets your friends and neighbors too, there'll be nobody left behind to grieve, and we will all go together when we go. What a comforting fact that is to know.
Greetings and salutations, little chuddies. It's me, your favorite internet loser, John A. Whitman here, and you're watching the John Doe Prepper channel. In today's video, I'm going to briefly go over my IFAK setup. For those of you who are not familiar, I'll just briefly go over this. IFAK is an acronym, IFAK. It stands for Individual First Aid Kit. This is intended to be a kit that you or someone rendering aid to you uses to save your life, typically in the context of wounds sustained in combat. So, to put that in kind of more layman's terms, this is an oh crap, I just got shot, stabbed, blown up, etc. type kit. So I'm going to briefly go over how I have mine set up, and then I'm going to kind of autistically ramble for a couple minutes about some little tips of how you ideally should set yours up, and some of the mistakes that I have sometimes seen with people setting their IFAKs up. Also, of course, I don't know everything. I'm not claiming to be some sort of expert, nor am I claiming that everything I say here is the gospel truth. This is just based on my training, my knowledge, and having also talked to a lot of very cool people who I am blessed to know, who have way more training and knowledge than I do, and who are nice enough to freely share that knowledge with me and other fellow schizos. So, with that all being said, here is my IFAK. You can see I have it on my battle belt. I like to keep my IFAK on my line 1 because I don't really like the idea of being married to my line 2 in order to have medical. I also have water on here for the same reason, but that's kind of outside of the scope of this video. So, talking just about the IFAK itself, I have it on the 9 o'clock position, so that's my left side, basically right on the side of my hip. I have it there because I can get to it there easily with both hands, and it's kind of out of the way of everything else. I used to have it at the 6 o'clock position right in the small of my back, and surprisingly enough, that didn't really interfere with my ability to sit comfortably all that much. It almost actually made it more comfortable, kind of like having a little built-in lumbar pillow basically strapped to my belt. But unfortunately, that did not play nice with my line 3, my assault pack. It would rest on top of the IFAK such that if I ever needed it while wearing the assault pack, I'd never be able to get it off. So I moved it here. And as I said, I can still get to it here with both hands, which is very important. Speaking of another thing that's very important, this is a rip-away pouch, which is a very good idea for an IFAK. Because you do not want this thing, if you need this thing, you're literally dying, basically. You need this to save your life. You do not want it stuck to your body while you're freaking out and squirming around and screaming and probably bleeding all over it. Not only because it makes life harder for you if you're trying to use it on yourself, which is kind of worst case scenario, but it also just makes it more difficult if someone else is trying to render aid to you, because again, this is meant to be used on yourself. But I've tried to get this off one-handed before, doesn't really work very well, camera and all that, so I'm gonna briefly pause this video, we'll do a little jump cut, and I'm gonna take this off. As I said, it is a rip away, so it's fairly easy. You just undo this buckle, you grab this loop, and you can just grip it and rip it, basically. But obviously, if I do that with the belt not on my person, I'll just end up pulling the whole belt towards me instead of actually pulling this off of the Velcro. But real quick, before I make that jump cut, you can see here I have this lovely little green and black red cross patch to denote that this is my IFAK. And because I happen to know my blood type, I also got a blood type patch. So always remember, if I need blood, I'm a POS. Anyway, on to the actual contents of the bag itself. Alright, so as you can see, I have taken this lovely little bag of goodies off of my battle belt. So, first, before I get into any of this, because I know at least one person is probably going to ask what brand of pouch this is made by Krydex Gear. That is Krydex. Yes, I know that's Chinesium. I don't care. It's good quality Chinesium. Anyway, getting back into the actual contents of this pouch. I like this particular design because right on the outside there is an elastic tourniquet holder into which I have placed a Cat Gen 7 tourniquet because they are the bomb. Obviously, there are other brands of tourniquet you could get that are of equal effectiveness, and it's kind of at that point more of a design preference, really, or preference for certain features or certain use cases. But personally, I like the Cat Gen 7 because it's pretty idiot proof. It's pretty hard to mess up applying one of these. And they're also just user-friendly in general. And they're also fairly light. Some other tourniquet designs that use metal components rather than polymer can be a little bit more weighty, of course. But that's kind of getting into the nitty-gritty. It doesn't really matter what tourniquet design you prefer, as long as it is a good quality tourniquet from a reputable company and it is approved by the COTCCC. For those who don't know, that is the Committee on Tactical Combat Casualty Care. It's kind of a mouthful. But basically, their whole job is to say which tourniquet designs are basically go-to-war ready. You know, obviously, they're kind of more affiliated with, at least stereotypically, I guess you could say, with kind of more of a law enforcement type setting, but in general, it's good to follow their advice because their testing is quite rigorous, and the Cat tourniquet, in pretty much all of its generations, has passed all of their very rigorous tests, as have some other fairly popular tourniquets on the market, such as the Soft T Wide, but again, kind of getting in the nitty-gritty there. Basically, if you want to know which tourniquets are good to go and which are not, just look up COTCCC approved tourniquets. There you go. And basically, the safest and best way to go about choosing a tourniquet is to just stick to the ones on that list. Pick a design that you like, that you think will work for you, and go with that. And again, stick to that list. That way you know you're getting a tourniquet that will actually work and will actually save your life if applied properly and not break on you or do some other stupid crap. Speaking specifically about the Cat tourniquets, there are a lot of counterfeits out there, so once again, make sure you're getting the real McCoy. Just figured I'd throw that out there. That's kind of a whole topic for another video. Maybe I'll do a video on specifically how to tell if a Cat tourniquet is legit or not, but that's kind of outside the scope of this video. And I've been rambling on long enough, so on to what is in the rest of the bag. One last thing I will say about this elastic tourniquet holder, though, that I like, is that even when this is on the rip-away mount and the buckle is done up, you can still get the tourniquet out of the holder just on its own, which is very nice. So then it's just readily accessible without you having to first rip this bag off and get it open. But speaking of getting it open, it is held shut with zippers, which have these big lovely toggles, as you can see, which are very easy to grab and just kind of yank open, even one-handed, which again is kind of important. Then you just open it up. So in here I have a pair of trauma shears. These are cheap little Pakistani-made $5 trauma shears, but they work. That's what matters. Are there nicer shears you could get? Yes. Are they necessary? No. Somebody who knows what they're doing would be able to get your pant leg off almost as quickly with this, like 7 seconds. It could take some people if they're really good with shears. But anyway, point is, that's what they're there for. They are very good to have. From there, I have wound packing materials and compression up here. So I have a 4-inch Israeli dressing. It's not a brand name Israeli dressing, but it's literally the same design of bandage. It's for all intents and purposes just a 4-inch Israeli. Then I have plain Z-fold gauze, 1 packet of that. And then I have 2 packets, you can see them there, count them, 1, 2 packets of combat gauze, which is hemostatic gauze. That's gauze impregnated with an agent that causes your blood to clot much more readily and efficiently. So basically it helps stop bleeding more quickly. Very important to have, because not every type of arterial bleed can be stopped with a tourniquet. As the old saying kind of humorously goes, you can't put a tourniquet on a taint. There's also other places, but the point still stands. For those types of arterial bleeds, typically junctional bleeds, meaning like your armpits or where the legs meet the groin area, that's what these are for. There's other uses for them, obviously, but that's the primary one. Moving on to the other half of the bag here, I have a pair of size medium nitrile gloves, because if it's wet and sticky and not yours, you should not be touching it. I have a black Sharpie right here for noting the time on the tourniquet. You write the time that the tourniquet was applied right on that strap there after pulling it over to secure the windlass in place. Also, if you are lucky enough to be in a group in which there is a dedicated medic and you have all the other necessary infrastructure to actually make it worth having all of that, they could potentially use this Sharpie while rendering aid to you to write necessary information on your forehead for the next level of care to know. For example, what meds do you have on board? What did they give you at what dose and at what time? And so forth. Or another example could be for writing down your triage priority, again, for the next level of care. But that's kind of getting into more nitty-gritty. That's outside of the scope of this video. The primary purpose of having this here is to write down the time of application on the tourniquet. Getting into even more advanced crap, I will preface by saying, if you do not know how to use these, you should not be spending your money on these. You should not be using them. For the love of God, do not use one of these on someone if you do not know what you're doing. This is a decompression needle, specifically a 10-gauge ARS. So this is for when someone has what's called a tension pneumothorax. The sort of TLDR of that is there's an injury to the chest area that is causing air from one of your lungs to leak out of the lung and into your chest cavity, kind of like a one-way valve. So every time you breathe, you're filling up your chest cavity like a balloon, which increases the pressure, which in turn makes it harder for your lungs to expand and for you to keep breathing. And eventually that will stop you from breathing and you can die. So this is literally a 3¼ inch long catheter needle that you stab into somebody's freaking chest to relieve that pressure. Which is why I say, if you are not properly trained to use these, you should not be getting them or using them in any context whatsoever, particularly any context in which lawyers still exist. And as far as that's concerned, that's where I'm going to leave it for the sake of covering my own butt. Basically, if you don't know what you're doing, don't bother with these. If you want to bother with these, first get the proper training. Moving on. In this little pouch here, I have a size 28 French nasopharyngeal airway. Can I unfold it a little bit to show you? Yes. There it is. It's literally just a rubber tube to which I have taped a small packet of lubricant. So if someone has an injury to their neck or somewhere else on their body that prevents them from breathing properly, you can lube up this nose noodle and stick it up their nose. It will go up through the nasal cavity and down to the back of the throat, where it will then allow them to breathe through said tube so that they don't die. From there, I have 2 hyphen vent chest seals. The idea of having 2 of these is these are for typically if you have a gunshot wound to the chest area. Typically, there will be an entry and an exit, so you have 1 chest seal for each, 1 for the entry and 1 for the exit. Finally, I have a super combat cravat. This is a dry sterile burn dressing as well as a triangular bandage, so you can use this as a sling. You could even improvise a tourniquet out of this in a pinch, but you of course should not rely on that as your primary method of arterial occlusion. And you can also use it for a variety of other things. You could use this with the Z-fold gauze as an improvised pressure bandage and a whole host of other things. Very good thing to have in an IFAK. A lot of people neglect to put this in because they either think they don't need it or they just didn't think of it. Definitely good to have that in there, at least in my opinion. So that is everything that I keep in my IFAK. So from here, we'll do another little jump cut. I'll get this all packed up, play a little bit of real-life Tetris, as I said previously, get this all packed up and back on my battle belt, and then I'll give my little spiel of my closing statements, and then that'll basically be the end of the video. Alright, the IFAK is now back on my battle belt, so I will quickly give some little tips about your IFAK and some mistakes I've seen some people do with setting their IFAKs up, and then we'll close out the video because this is already kind of long enough. So one of the things I do want to say is even though you do have at least one tourniquet in your IFAK, you should not rely solely on your IFAK for tourniquets. You should, in my opinion, at bare minimum, have at least 2 or 3 tourniquets in your full combat loadout. So what I typically do is I have the one here in my IFAK, I have a second one in another elastic style tourniquet holder on my line 2 gear, which would be either my chest rig or my plate carrier, and then I have a third tourniquet in a cargo pocket in my combat pants. It also probably wouldn't be the worst idea in the world to put even more extra tourniquets in my line 3, which would be my assault pack at some point, but of course that's kind of a little bit further down the line at this point, since I already have my minimum of 3 on my line 1 and line 2. Another thing is, as I kind of said in the beginning, an IFAK is meant to save your life. It is not meant to be a boo-boo kit, right? So I've seen people put like Band-Aids and sting ointment and over-the-counter meds and other crap like that in your IFAK. That is not what your IFAK is for. You do not want to clutter up your life-saving equipment pouch with a bunch of other random crap that is not there for that purpose and is just going to get in the way. It's not to say you can't have a boo-boo kit somewhere else on your gear if you really want to. It's just that that stuff does not belong in your IFAK. That's for a whole different set of first aid circumstances. But with that all being said, I think that's all I really have to say about this. So I hope you found this video helpful, or at the very least kind of entertaining. And thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you like it, consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, leaving a comment. And if you'd like to deal with my craziness 24/7, you can consider joining the Discord server. The link to that is, as always, on my channel page in the About Me section. With all that being said, I will not take up any more of your time. Once again, thank you for watching this video, and I will see you next time on the John Doe Prepper channel. Bye.
We will all go together when we go, all suffused with an incandescent glow. No one will have the endurance to collect on his insurance. Lloyds of London will be loaded when they go.